Welcome, everyone, to Data Drivers. I am Corey Minton, an IT strategist at Splunk, and I'm joined by two other IT strategists at Splunk, Kyle Prinz and John Labaugh. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Glad to have you join us for the fourth hackathon in the Data Drivers series. And today, in this exciting hands-on joint collaborative hacking exercise, we are going to be digging deeper into IT service intelligence, how you build services, and how we make sure that we drive the outcomes that we want and the infrastructure that powers the outcomes that we want happen exactly as we expect. And so welcome everybody to the show. Hopefully you'll make sure that you've registered to join us. And if you don't know what this is all about, let me just tell you a little bit about why we're here. So Data Drivers is an exciting series where we do two main things. The first thing we do is we go racing on Iracing, and we actually instrument our Iracing gaming PCs, and we send all the data from both our gaming PCs and Iracing telemetry all to Splunk. And we expose that data to our Splunk lab so that you all can get hands-on with it. So we go racing. That's the fun part of creating a fun racing data set. And then we host these sessions where we invite you to get hands-on with us. And if you haven't already registered via the link that you can use your handy-dandy smartphone to hit the link via that QR code there. I have to show the QR code. That's generally pretty.
Yeah, you got to show the slides, man. That's all right.
The show's already off to a rough start. So now you can actually scan your QR code. If you don't know about what QR codes are, hold your camera phone up and click that, or you can just probably Google Splunk Data Drivers, hit the registration link. And when you register, you get invited to our Discord channel, and hopefully you're over on Discord following along, because that's where we've got our SMEs. They're going to provide some advice. So the super fun part is that if you missed it, Splunk actually has announced a broader support for McLaren's racing efforts. And not only is Splunk a sponsor for McLaren's F1 team, they are now a full sponsor and major partner for their esports endeavors through Shadow McLaren, also part of the Logitech G Challenge globally. Are either of you guys gonna race in the G Challenge? Yeah,
I'm gonna try. If I can make sure that I get my Dramamine done in time, I'll join in.
I'm gonna give it a shot, but I think race is a very generous word for what I will be doing. So
that's right.
Well,
we'll see how it goes.
Pulling up the rear.
I'll try to make you feel better. The exciting part about it for, I think, us and all of you that are involved in Data Drivers is that Logitech G Challenge is actually, it's 3 different types of races. So there's an F1 style race, there's a NASCAR style race, and then there's a road car GT3 style race. And interestingly, the GT3 car race is actually being hosted on Assetto Corsa Competizione, which Tobin told us about. I think I pronounced it right that time, which is good.
Very fancy.
Yeah, V fancy, but not my driving. But the other two, the Indy race, or excuse me, the open wheel F1 style race and the NASCAR race are both hosted on Iracing. And Splunk is excited to have a series called The Art of Data going as part of that Logitech G Challenge. And we are right in the middle of it. So welcome, and I hope you will continue to join us for this exciting series. And like I said, we got some fun stuff we're going to get hands-on with labs today.
Yeah, so we are glad you're here. If you would like to participate, we have 2 different ways you can do that. The first one is active, hands-on, where you would be actively participating. And if you want to do that, I just added a link in the chat. I think I got it set up that way, where you can sign up for Data Drivers. We will give you access to our Discord server, which we are monitoring all the time for feedback, help, just chat, hang out. You can join us for hacking sessions if you'd like, which is what you're watching right now. You can also join us for racing sessions, which you would have to sign up for Iracing, get your gaming kit set up. So it's not free, but hey, it's a good time. We would love to have you out there. Ryan Plaus has joined us, and he's absolutely gotten great at this, and we've loved having him join us and have fun with that. Or the other one, is the hackathon, which you're here, but it's a little bit more active in the Discord. That's where we send out the lab credentials and all those sorts of things. So you can also do passive consumption, which is exactly what you're doing now. Just, hanging out with us, watching. We're more fun than TV, less commercials, and just keep being awesome. But we would love to have you at least join the Discord server and hang out. and chat with us and see what's going on and where we can build some more fun insights into it.
Yeah, and just one thing to add there, Kyle. I mean, so it's important to note that if you're not joining us live today, if you're watching a replay, or maybe you don't have just the moment to join in and hack along with us today, the environments that we're using today and the credentials that we're using today are going to be available for the considerable future. So if you want to follow along a little bit later, maybe take it at your own pace, please do that. It's going to be fun.
Nice. Well said, John. Well, I know Kyle said there's less commercials, but we do have to have one commercial, but it's kind of self-serving, I promise.
Good one.
I am incredibly excited to tell you all that Splunk's annual user conference known as .conf, .conf 21 is happening as a hybrid. And that means we actually get to have an in-person conference this year in Las Vegas, October 18th through the 21st. And I know the three of us will be on site in person and super excited to welcome you all. Again, obviously following all the safety guidelines that are necessary to do that appropriately, but I am so incredibly excited. But those of you who can't join us for whatever reason based on the world events, we will absolutely make everything available to folks virtually, and you can sign up at conf.splunk.com. And as always, Splunk University, great opportunity for you to get your creds on, take your tests, your classes, and go build your Splunk skills that you can use in your day job. However, I do want to have the shameless plug, which is some of you may remember Boss of the Knock, right? It's our gamified experience where we create challenges in episodes where you get to get hands-on with real data in Splunk and compete. You get a team together and you compete to see who is the quickest to solve the challenges and the most effective at using Splunk to navigate and solve these interesting episodes. And I'm excited to say, so there is we've changed the Boss of the Knock name to reflect the new sort of world that we live in, which is Boss of Ops and Observability, because, frankly, Splunk is used across more than just the Network Operations Center. It's really used across IT Ops and Observability. So we include that in the name. So a fun new name. The Ghost is out there. But self-serving for us is there's actually going to be 2 data drivers episodes in the Boss of Ops and Observability. And so if you've done one of these before, if you've done Bottin in the past, let me just tell you, there's new stuff. Like, it's going to be completely new. We've got version 5 of Boo coming out at .conf, and we are super excited to welcome you all again, both in person and virtually. So make sure you check it out. Also, one other kind of spoiler alert, Data Drivers is actually we're going to have a session in .conf. I think it's ITO 1117. It's called Data Drivers and the Race to Observability. We'll actually have a breakout session and maybe have some guests to talk about. But if you're into racing, you're into data, this is the place to be. So come hang out with us. All right, Kyle, why don't you walk everybody through what they can expect for today's session?
Yeah, so we are on hackathon number 4 today. So if you're just joining us or this is a bit new to you, here's kind of how we do it. First off, we break down today's hackathon into a challenge introduction. So what is the specific issue we're trying to solve? From there, we go chat with Tobin Lee, who is the McLaren Shadow esports manager. And he'll provide us a bit of the reasoning behind why we have that challenge and how it will relate back to make his life as an esports manager better and help his racers perform faster, better, in a bit more precise manner. From there, we also then talk a bit around the Splunk technical overview, which is why we have the wonderful John LeBaugh to come chat with us. And then we open we open
How did I end up on the bottom?
That was very well. We kind of lined ourselves in like it's the antithesis of like our order of increasing abilities in ITSI, right? It just as you go down the stack, they get smarter. Maybe intelligence also. I don't know.
Yeah, it's it works well. Yeah,
that's right.
So number 4, this is the collaborative hacking, where this is kind of the bread and butter of it, and this is why we're so encouraging about getting you to join our Discord servers. That's where we will share the credentials for the collaborative hacking environment. And as John said before, this thing stays up. So if you're not watching this live, that's totally fine. The data is still being generated. It's still being procured into the environment, so you are able to see what's going on. Number 5, we give you a bit of a homework bonus challenge. I know it's summertime and it's summer break, but you're going to have a little bit of homework if you want to exceed and go above and beyond. Number 6, we provide a preview of next session. Now, we normally have those every month, but because of some scheduling issues, we're going to have it in 2 weeks. So you are going to want to jump on this lab ASAP and get that done so you don't fall behind, and you can join us live here at the tail end of the month for Hackathon 5.
Yeah.
So
pretty excited.
Drop us in the chat.
Yeah, pretty excited. We're actually we're going to have some new racers joining us. I don't want to do any spoiling, but we're going to have a couple of new racers joining us for the next couple of series, and some new guests from Splunk's senior leadership team joining us. So make sure and go to that link that Kyle dropped over there in the chat. Register there because Data Drivers is taking off, baby. We're having fun. People are getting excited about what we're doing, and the amount of fun that can be had while actually learning things and using technology that is totally transferable into your day job is a real deal. Now, I do want to say that, as Kyle mentioned, we had to reschedule this session, and that was actually because of me. So I had a little health issue. It wasn't a big deal, but I had a few days in the hospital. I'm good now, which is great. But during Hackathon 3, we had a couple of technical difficulties in our data generation process, and it really just threw off our whole mojo. So what I wanted to do was I want to just do a quick recap of what we built last time so that everybody can kind of see and catch up with what was done there. Because we did a few things to make sure that we caught everything up in the lab environment to kind of where we are today, so that we're all on the same page. So let's see if this works. Okay. So I'm driving data. It's incredible. So one thing I want to, and Kyle, we'll talk about this later. I'm going to actually just kind of talk about it now because it's probably makes sense. But it's, I'm really proud to say that John and Kyle worked tirelessly, and John mostly. We know that's true, Kyle. That's true. But John is a data wizard with creating the ability to stream data sets into Splunk continuously for the purpose of building these gamified experiences. And so what John has actually done for us is he has actually gone in and created a data generation process that every 30 minutes it reruns the data from our Bristol race that broadcast. You all can watch it. It's race number 4. It raced about 2 weeks ago. So the race from Bristol, that was a NASCAR style race. We changed things up for a little bit of fun. And by the way, if you missed it, Blake Reynolds, professional driver for McLaren Shadowy Sports, beat the pants off of the field. And we saw, much like Tomac has done to us in the past, we see why they are so highly rated and so good at what they do in their craft. So thanks again, Blake, for joining us. That was super fun. But what we did is John has created this data gen that's actually creating the data every 30 minutes. So it's like a 20-minute race. So about every 30 minutes it restarts, and basically you get 20 minutes of good race data. And so that's what you're going to see here in the lab that I'm showing you. And by the way, I'm logged into the lab that is our Splunk lab that you all would log into. So if you have the credentials to log into this environment, this is exactly what you're seeing. Okay. So what we did last time is we built an ITSI service called Corey's Car. And the idea was we wanted to monitor a number of KPIs that would tell us how's the car doing. And we did that because Tobin told us over and over again, both last time, but he continues to kind of to tell us the story around how incredibly important it is for them to understand all the things that impact their pit strategy. So things like tires, critical importance, right? It's a consumable. The temperature and the wear are very, very important to understand, grip, to understand when they're going to get a pit, but also things like fuel level get very interesting because if you run out of gas, obviously you can't drive. And so what we did is we built a KPI, or we built a service that's made up of these KPIs you see here. And then what we did, and we can click into in ITSI, we can click on any one of these. Let's do left rear tire temp. That's kind of a fun one. Okay, so left rear tire temp. If you see here, we created a KPI, which is just pulling a metric that's called in Iracing the left rear tire temp. And we actually have created thresholds. So you can see a spark line of the values over time. And then we created thresholds that actually tell us, is it something we should be concerned about or not, right? So in this case, we have a base, which is, sort of anything above 80 or below 80 degrees, that's kind of considered the base, right? The tire is not really warm, but we really want the tire above 80 degrees because that says we think it's kind of warmed up. but below 110 because that seems like it's too hot and it's probably getting gummy and not as able to perform as expected. So that's what we did. We created these thresholds for each of these KPIs, and we created a number of KPIs. That's kind of awesome. But go ahead.
So Corey, what was really interesting to me about this process is we said, hey, Tobin, you're the expert here. Tell us about where you think these things sit at. And he kind of gave us an interesting challenge where he said, well, I think maybe we should look at the data and figure out whether our assumptions and understanding of that is actually correct. So we're going to spend a little bit of time when we do a little bit of the rehashing here, talking about that and kind of our journey to figure out what we thought was the appropriate threshold. And that's something that's really unique and interesting about ITSI is that the data can tell you a lot of things that you didn't know beforehand. So
that's exactly right.
One of the great takeaways that I got from this fun experiment that we did here.
For sure. And so Tobin said, he was like point blank. He's like, we asked him, we said, what's the tire temp supposed to be? And he's like, I don't know, man. Like, and you're going to hear him talk. You're going to hear him talk this week shortly about, NASCAR's kind of not his bailiwick. And so, he's like, figure out what the data tells you, man. Like that's more important. So like here is a great example, John, of when we build the thresholds. Here's that left rear tire temp. And right, we created based on, we just did some Google searching, like what's the good temperature for a tire. But it turns out like what I'm seeing here is that the data, this is basically the beginning of a race. We've gone racing, and then this is sort of towards the end of the race. So that's our 30-minute window, right? Because so from 7:10 to 6:40, that's our 20-minute race. That makes sense. So what I'm seeing here though is it looks like we're seeing granularity at every minute in this case. So a lap at Bristol is about 15 seconds. So in a minute, I've gone about 4 laps, and it looks like once I get over about 82 degrees, it seems like the tires are pretty much warmed up. So it sounds like I kind of want to keep those tires probably above something like, I don't know, like maybe like 86 degrees, or if we want to be more specific, let's say like 83, right? And so we have the ability there. You can see that the tires, we can set thresholds that, hey, somebody should be alerted. Tires too cold to really go push hard at this point. Maybe we adjust that. So great stuff on thresholding. And again, we build some services. Now, I do want to do one quick view. So we have service analyzers, which is, again, I'm in ITSI. So you saw me go to Splunk. This is the ITSI landing page when you open that app within Splunk. And I'm going to have my window be the last hour just for fun. But one of the things we can do is we can have this tiled view of KPIs, but I can also go into tree view. And I'm noticing something here, Kyle. Our homework assignment was for you and I to go build services for our cars, and then we could compare and contrast, kind of my thoughts on service versus yours. And while I was in the hospital, I'd put some work into this. I don't know what you were doing. I don't see a service here. Did I miss something?
Yeah. So homework is cool when you have a home. I moved.
Okay. All right.
I'd like to take the old adage, good artists create, great artists steal. So
okay.
Is there something here I can do?
So this is one of the more interesting things that we're going to talk about here today. But before we do that, Corey, you mind if we go back and look at the 2 different visualizations that we had there?
Yeah, man.
We were looking at 2 different kind of lenses, if you will, on the same data. So one of the things that we kind of wanted to rehash was just some key terminology. And I'm happy to jump in to do that. But this view here really kind of points out why that's important, right? So if you go back to the tiled view, if you will, we're seeing a pretty detailed view of all of the things that we're measuring. Again, we're measuring the health of Corey's car, but we're also measuring all those individual KPIs that both Tobin told us were important, and then we decided was kind of interesting for us to look at. And right away, we can see that there's one KPI that's well outside the bounds of everything else. We'll get into that in a minute. But the thing
I can tell you what that was. That right front tire was getting worked to death as I was turning left. And towards the end of the race, that thing just got cooked, and you could see the car just push right up the track.
What is it? Turn left, drive fast? Is that what you guys were saying?
Was it
all that friction right there on the right front tire really just kind of shows what, the thresholds that we set for all the tires. Those tires are presumably built the same, but one of them's seeing a lot more stress than the rest.
It's true.
But what we're doing here is we're taking all of this KPI data that we've kind of gathered for, what have we got? 10 different data points for the individual car. And we're rolling that up into a service. And in this case, our service is Corey's car. And so what that really gives us is this nice, 10,000 foot view all the way down to the 50-foot view of what's going on. And so when we switch from the view that we've got right now, which is all of those data points, right back into just looking at Corey's car, and this one little dot gives us, a very clear view of, is Corey's car healthy according to the roll up of all the things that we're measuring.
Yeah.
And so what we're going to do here, because Kyle didn't do his homework, is we're going to take Corey's work and we're going to duplicate it for Kyle. Just give him an easy button.
Yes.
See?
And by the way, and this is one of the things that makes that is a best practice within ITSI. So one of the things that I did, because I was suspecting Kyle might be a slacker in this one, that I
moving and he's got
I know it's a real thing.
We'll give him a little bit of a pass here, right?
I get it. So what I did is I actually created a service template, which is the idea that, hey, if you know that you have a bunch of different entities that are going to want to use the same service template, then create a service template, like they're all going to need the same KPI list, and then link it to a service template. And that way you can make global updates to those service templates. So we'll get into that in more detail. But here you can see I've selected the Iracing car performance. It's going ahead and grabbing all those KPIs that I already talked about. It's going to pull in all of the existing sort of thresholds that I built, right? And it's got everything in, which is fantastic. So in this one, it says, hey, who are we building this for? From a driver perspective, because we split it by the entity, I'm going to say, hey, we're building this for Kyle. So let's go ahead and save that and save and enable. And remember, always press save.
Yeah, that green button will get you if you're not careful.
It are important.
Yeah, everybody, please do feel free to follow along. If you want to build one of these and use those templates, please do. Because it is a shared environment, even if you're building a car for, let's say, Kyle, or you want to duplicate your work, just throw your initials in the front of it, because we do have to have unique names, but you're more than welcome to. You should have every permission you need to build these out. And we actively encourage you to, right? That's what the hackathon's all about. So
100%. Yeah, good point, John. Yeah, just make sure, we should have said that up front.
Is already on it.
Oh, I know. Ryan's already, he's chatting it up. He's building them. So make sure you put RP in front of those, buddy. But so now, look, George built a car. Somebody built a car while we're sitting here. That's fantastic.
So,
all right. So George built him a car.
Is ITSI is going to start calculating this. It's going to take about a minute for this to start happening, for those things to start to light up. But you should be able to use that, and you should be able to define, and what we're going to call this is with an entity. So if you wouldn't mind, Corey, go back to the configuration tab there, and we want to hit on this just for a minute, because it is pretty important to kind of understand what we're doing and how we're slicing and dicing this data so easily for you, right? So when we select an entity, go under configure services, if you would, Corey.
I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. So under the car that we just built for Kyle, if you select on that, one of the things that he did, he got dropped right into this screen that says, who do I want to be the driver for? And in this case, we have Kyle as the driver, and we're using that as what we call in ITSI an entity. But generally, when we think about this in a traditional IT infrastructure type place, the entities are things with like power cords or
or an IP address,
racks, or data centers, or those types of things. Really, an entity is something that we want to filter on and slice and dice our data by. So if we want to split by it in traditional SPL speak, or filter onto it, this is what we're doing with that. So in this case, we had done a little bit of pre-work, and we created these entities for us. So simple as that. Now we've got the exact same service that we had built for Corey for Kyle, and we're just looking at it in a little bit different lens. It's super cool.
Look at me working hard. Working hard over here. Caught up.
That's exactly right. Well, and by the way, and so you see George and Ryan were already taking advantage of our service template, and that is exactly the idea. So excellent. Okay, so I think we're kind of good. Like we kind of know where we are. We built a service. It was all about the car, and that's super important for our buddy Tobin. But today we need to tell you about what the challenge is today, because we're going to be going a bit deeper. Kyle, why don't you tell us about the challenge for today's hackathon?
Absolutely. So we are going to be building service dependencies between the track condition and our car's health, but then creating a new service that will reflect our outcome, which ideally is winning the race. It could be just surviving it. I don't know how it goes.
That's true.
So that's the goal. And just follow along if you want. Again, these labs are going to be open. You can handle all of this later on if you just want to watch passively, maybe drop in the chat and have some chats. Again, Discord server, we got the lab credentials there. We got the live data rerunning every 30 minutes from Bristol. And again, we're available via Discord to help you out. So we're all available pretty regularly.
Yep.
If you have any questions, please feel free to help out. We love helping out and finding outcomes out of our data. So please don't be shy there.
For sure. So again, this is all based on, we're using Splunk, which is cool tech, right? But tech for just the sake of tech is not really valuable to people. They don't spend money on it. And what we're connecting to is a business outcome. And racing teams win, or they make money, and they get better sponsors. They get to compete in upper echelons of racing when they win. And if a car is just performing healthy, that doesn't mean they're winning, right? All the cars on the track could be healthy, but somebody's got to win. And so that's what we're trying to connect to in these next services, and understanding how those services connect to each other, and how a car is actually dependent in some ways on the track's conditions, and that both of those things impact our ability to go be successful winning a race. And that's what we're trying to help Tobin and the Shadow McLaren team do. But you know what? Instead of me telling you all these things in my point of view, why don't we go check in with Tobin? We're going to switch to a video here real quick, and we'll be right back live. All right, well, we're back with Tobin Lee, who, as you all know, is the manager of McLaren's Shadow Esports team. But you may not know, if you haven't been watching the Twitterverse and other social media platforms, Tobin is also one of the stars of Backseat Driver. Tobin, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about this Backseat Driver series.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think it's a pleasure to be back on, and Backseat Driver's been a bit of a laugh. Let's put it that way. Watching the Grand Prix over the last couple of weeks, and yeah, it's just good fun, kind of just getting a feel for what it's like back in the real world. I'm so taken in by the esports stuff that it's nice to take a step back and look at the real thing. So yes,
absolutely.
Good to be here.
McLaren had a fantastic weekend this weekend in France. Sewing up that third place in the Constructors' Championship with a 5th and 6th place finish. That's super fun. But for this week's race in Data Drivers, we're going NASCAR style. So first question for you, Tobin, is turning left really that hard?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think from working with the NASCAR lot, I think we can, those guys, it's funny actually, because from working, like my background specifically is much more in the road stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But from working with the NASCAR guys, you learn that yes, you're turning left, but when you're going into such detail in one element of driving, it opens up so much more to it than just that, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's hard, it's complicated, but I think it's a cool kind of discipline, and it's been good to really immerse ourselves into it with McLaren Shadow. So
cool.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a bit new to this entire esports and racing world, but what's it like for McLaren Shadow to compete in eNASCAR, which is so different than what we've been doing in Grand Prix and Formula One and all that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been good. Like I just think it's a kind of new experience for everyone. It's funny with taking our structures as a team from what we do on the road stuff, and then just adapting it over has been quite a good challenge. I think, in the way that we work with drivers, there's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of subtle differences, which are kind of interesting to look into with, strategy and all the different techniques that our drivers use. So yeah, it's again been a good learning experience.
Yeah, I was curious, like kind of two questions. Like, you said you don't have much experience. Like, did you ever compete in NASCAR or like the NASCAR style events? And then, like as a manager, you talked about what maybe are the specifically different things that you're thinking about when going from road racing to NASCAR?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple things that are completely new to to oval racing if you've come from a road racing background. And that normally comes in the form of how the trains and the tow work. So working together in big groups of cars is something that in oval racing is like at its core of how you would do well at a race. But in road, it just doesn't exist, right? So I think working out where you sit in a pack and how you can use a pack and drive it, with respect to everyone else is something, it's like a skill that just doesn't exist in the road side of things. And I think that opens up a lot of doors that, we as management and in terms of the strategy that we're using, we have to look into it in some detail. So yeah.
Okay, so I need to work on my drafting. Now, yes. I've got one more question. We haven't had to pit so far, but I do want to know what would be our pitting strategy for this, and what's interesting for you to know around a pitting strategy for this real-time race.
That's a good question. I think it will vary. I think people will go on, you'll be able to do a variety of different strategies, but I think that the main thing that you'll be looking out for during a race with pit stops is you just need to kind of, I guess, gauge where you are in the race and gauge where other people are in their races, and just use your fuel and tire data, but also the feel that you guys have, and then just combine all of that together to make an educated estimate as to when the right time is. It's kind of funny because I think it's hard to say for sure at this stage, but in the moment I just feel like you'll know, if that makes sense. You'll have the feel, and then that's kind of one of the things with ovals. The good thing is though, if you decide that it's time, it won't be very long at all until you're right by the pit entry, and then that's it, you can go in. But in road, several minutes can pass, or days if you're on the Nordschleife. So
that's exactly right. It's very different world. Now, kind of stepping away from the NASCAR thing about it is honestly, it's something I'm hoping to learn from you as a maybe competitive advantage. We talked about before that like driving in esports is transferable many times to like competitively driving on a track. But one of the things that on the track you have in knowing how hard you're pushing the car, kind of where your turn-in points, are you turning aggressively, are you doing the things right, is all through your seat, right? You get a lot of feedback through your rear end about like, am I pushing the car to its limit? Am I like right at that scary razor edge where the car is slipping perfectly across the track? That you just don't get that in like in a sim racing. Like even if you get super immersive, put on the VR headset, have the force feedback wheel, coil pedals, all the stuff. What do you like? What tells you that you're driving at the edge? I know you've driven professionally and competitively. Like, what are some of those like telltale things you're looking and feeling for when you lack the feedback from your seat?
Yeah, well, I think in real motorsport, the feedback through your seat is so important because, in real life, you get often a very finite amount of practice laps. And so all the kind of input and feel that you can get is so useful. In esports, though, obviously you're not limited to track time, and you will often do thousands of laps at the top level, especially in oval racing. You'll do, hundreds of thousands of laps, maybe. But if you're competing, I think ultimately it's a case of the more laps you do, you're going to be training your visual input into understanding what pushing too hard looks like. And you'll find that from doing laps, you'll just build up such an incredible visual reference to what you should be doing that it kind of fills in for that other feel that you would be getting in the real life. And I think that's kind of it. It becomes a sixth sense once you've done enough laps. So it's very hard to explain. But very confident that with enough laps, you do just understand what it looks like, and your brain will kick in if you're going to push too hard. That's one of the things that I always found when I was driving myself. Like, it's weird, you can't put a finger on it, but it's there.
So it's just time. It's time in the sim, man. That's what it takes.
It really is.
Well, that's also true with using data. The more you get hands-on with it, the more you learn and the more you become visually aware of how to create insights. Well, Tobin, thanks again for hanging out with us. Let's get back to the hacking action. All right. Well, you heard it from Tobin, folks. If you want to be good at racing, spend lots of time in the seat. That may explain why I'm so terrible at it, actually. But as we said there, the key is to get hands-on with the data, and we're going to get hands-on in just a minute. But we do want to say, John, welcome back to being our subject matter expert. For those of you who joined us last time, John was our SME, and he's been kind enough to join us again to walk us through some of the steps to meet the challenge today. And John outsourced the production of his About Me slide. As evidenced by many of the notes. I think he maybe added a few notes, but my favorite is he doesn't know how many children he has, which is, that's stunning.
No, it's just the 3. It's just that it better be.
Maybe right. The slide creator wasn't too sure, so he wanted to put the caveat in.
It's all good. Well, John, why don't you do this just to make sure that we're all on the same page on some of the terminology we're using. We've talked about Splunk IT Service Intelligence a bit. If you just kind of walk us through at a high level, just some of the terms so that we're abundantly aware when we start getting hands-on, we know we have the same sort of vernacular and language, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thanks for having me back, guys. This has been a lot of fun. I'll join you guys anytime you want. This is a great program and just a lot of fun. It's a great way to explore, interesting data that I wouldn't have thought to go after. So super fun. So yeah, the entire point of IT service intelligence is absolutely to get a holistic view of all of your data across all the silos, right? So we're going to explore today a way to maybe roll this up into something that's a little bit more high level from our cars. It's great to have that individual lower level view, but we want to understand how IT or all of the KPIs that we need to monitor are actually affecting the business. And in this case, our business is going to be winning the race. So if you wouldn't mind, next slide, Corey. We want to get complete service visibility. This is a business focused dashboard. If you were to ask your boss's boss what they care about at the end of the day, I bet that top left corner panel that you've got there is revenue. And they probably care a little bit about some of the things that you have to care about as an IT practitioner to make sure that all of those things are running smoothly. But at the end of the day, it's all about making sure that your business is supplying what it is that you have set out to do. And the infrastructure that we use, the cars and the drivers to do that, while super important, are just one part of that puzzle. So we're going to explore today how we can go from the cars and how they're performing to the drivers to making sure that the track conditions are ideal for us and how we can adapt to them to make sure that we are as smooth and efficient as possible. Yeah. To do that, we kind of hit on this a little bit. If we jump over into the next slide, some terminology that we're going to use today. I just want to reiterate this since we kind of had that snafu last time. We didn't get to explore a little bit of that, just to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page as far as what we're talking about. When we talk about a service, it's a logical grouping of things that need to happen, or if I like to kind of like really break it down, it's a bucket of KPIs, if you will. So we take those KPIs that make sense to be measured together, like all the parts and pieces of the car, and we roll it up into this is the health of the car based on all of those individual pieces of KPIs that we're monitoring. The business processes that we end up wanting to look at, in this case, it's going to be our race, right? Our business process is what place did we come in the race and how well did we do? How well did we show? But it could be, managing your call center. It could be managing your order to cash process when you're checking out. These things can be kind of grouped together in whatever way makes sense to your business, and that's a really important way to think about it. As I mentioned, the entities are going to be the things that are delivering metrics for us to look at. In this case today, it's the racetrack, the cars, and the drivers, and their position there. We'll combine all of those things together to understand those things. But they're the way that I said we want to kind of split or slice and dice data, or things that we can say, I want this group of things to be put together to measure a service. And then, of course, last but not least, key performance indicators. these are the things that matter to us to make sure that we're running well. They're things that we can put a threshold on, whether it's by looking previously at the data or whether it's by using our domain knowledge or understanding our SLAs to put those together. So I think we could probably skip over, just in the interest of time. We kind of went over some of these things, right?
Yeah.
KPIs and health scores, they're what we're generally looking at. Entities are the things that we're going to be getting that data from.
Yep.
And
all right.
I think we want to do a little bit of a deeper dive. So we've created, I think, 4 or 5 people have created cars, but we want to bring that up to the next level. So Kyle's going to cover how we're going to do that real quick, and then we're going to dive in. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. So I think we've covered this a bit earlier, I believe. Yeah. So I think we're ready to
just jump in. Let's do it.
Let's do this. Yeah. Let's get weird.
No time like the present, you know?
So the fun part is, unlike our previous hackathons, where Kyle was kind enough to be the hands on the steering wheel, so to say, I'm doing it today.
Yeah, we're letting him have a try at it. We'll see how.
I know it's it just and candidly, I'm actually quite pleased because I started nerding out on this, and the work I've been doing to prep for the next couple episodes, I'm gone full nerd on this. So I'm having a lot of fun. So I candidly kind of stole it from Kyle. I was like, I kind of want to show this stuff. So, okay. So we're going to get started. When you log into the environment to start, so just so we're on the same page on roles, everybody. So I'm going to be talking a bit, but I'm also going to be interrupted on a regular basis by smarter people than me. Their names are Kyle and John, who are going to guide me on some things if I get lost. But we're gonna kind of explain what we're doing. And again, the goal is we're going to start by creating a service that is the track, right? And then we're going to go start building some dependencies between track and car. Then we're going to build a service that is our overall race performance. That's that business outcome. Okay, so you log into Splunk. You get some apps on the side. We are using, as we covered in previous episodes, we're using Splunk Observability Cloud to get the metrics in. Then we're using the Splunk Infrastructure Monitoring add-on to bring the data from Observability Cloud into Splunk Enterprise and ITSI. You have the native search and reporting, but we're in IT Service Intelligence. So you hit that IT Service Intelligence app, and you'll see, yes, just John mentioned, some of you fellow hackers are out there creating cars, which I could not be happier about. That makes me super happy. Yeah. It is fantastic. And so, again, reminder, if you build anything new, put your initials on it, and the environment will be up for a while. So let's get to it. So the service of building a service, it's pretty straightforward in IT Service Intelligence. We use our configuration tab, and we want to build a service. So we click on services, and in services, we'll have the opportunity to create a new service. And here you can see those 4 services previously are using a service template called Iracing Car Performance, which is great. And they're splitting by their entities. Cool stuff. But we're going to show you how to build one from scratch, specifically about the track.
Almost from scratch, right?
Well, do you want to build this one I was going to build this one from scratch, and then we'll use a template on the final outcome.
Even better. A little refresher on building a service from scratch. I like it.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's just call this track health. Because we want to make it sort of reusable, because we may run a different track someday later, but we are generally concerned about the overall track health. And we're going to not use the pre-built out-of-the-box capabilities. We're going to manually add the service content because, again, Iracing is not a data set that's something, every Splunk ITSI customer thinks, oh, we got to have that. They have. Every Splunk ITSI customer cares about app servers and databases and database monitoring. We're doing.
Very few care about cars.
That's right. So we're showcasing, by the way, this is the art of data. This is the data to everything platform in its purest form. And so we're just going to go with manually add the service content and click next or create. And here it's going to bring up the track health window, which is just basically our, hey, you need to go configure what this service actually is. So I want to start with our KPIs. And part of the reason why I want to start with KPIs, just so we're on the same page, is that everybody, and when we see the metrics, you'll understand this, but everybody's sending basically the same metrics about the track, because all cars are on the same track. So there's really not a need for us to go build a track service for everyone, and we'll show you how we can do some averaging. So I'm just going to go start by, instead of creating like this breakout for entities, I want to create KPIs. So let's start with a new one. And in this case, again, because we're not doing something that's IT out of the box, we'll call it a generic KPI, which is kind of unfair. It's not really generic. It's like, it's sort of,
it's very specific, actually.
It's actually, yeah, it's exactly right. It's highly specific. It just depends on what it is. Okay. So in track health, what are some of the things that you guys might think about, or based on, previous conversations with Tobin, what are kind of the classes of data, the things you might find interesting? Kyle, what about you?
Truck temperature.
Okay. So let's call one track temp, and let's just go in here, hit next, and see what happens. Okay. So now what it gives you is the ability to, set up a KPI source, and it could be a, if you've created a base search previously in Splunk, that's great. If you've created a data model, you can select from there. We could go ahead and type a search here, even run it in search to see if it works properly. But given that we're actually bringing the data from Iracing via the Splunk infrastructure monitoring add-on, we're just going to go over here to SIM metrics, because everything's coming in via SIM. And we're going to select a metric name. And you can see here, there's a bunch of them that start with Iracing. So we're going to go with Iracing. And then you said track temp. Now, Kyle, if you do me a favor and drop the link to the VARs file, as a recap, you're seeing, what you're seeing here is a list of all the metrics that are available to us that we're bringing in from Iracing into Splunk. There's a lot. It could be considered an eye chart, but it's data, so we need a lot of data. So that's really, really good that we have it.
This is actually the pared down version of the data, if I recall.
It is, yeah. We actually, so there's more than 400 metrics that get spun off at 6 times a second from Iracing. But what we did is we went and pulled in when we created that script in earlier stages of the hackathon, we pulled the data that was, one, useful to us. Some of the data was sort of interesting to the session. It didn't really matter to like car performance. And so, yes, this is a pared down version. So you mentioned track temp.
Yes.
And there's actually 2 different track temps that are available to us in Iracing. One is a track temp that is just kind of an overall average of the actual track temperature. And then the other is they actually simulate as if members of your pit crew were going out and taking laser readings around the track of the actual track temp, as if you have a pit crew, which is awesome. So we're going to start with track temp. That's an easy one. And we're going to hit next, because that means what we're going to do is we're going to pull the metric for what Iracing gives us as track temp. We really don't need to split by entity, because again, we said everybody's sending the same data. That's cool. I like to do this because we're looking for granularity that's a little bit more granular. Every minute's fine, especially, especially in road racing. That's totally true, because, some of the tracks take 2 to 5 to 7 minutes to take a lap. Bristol's obviously a little bit of an anomaly, but that's every 4 laps we'll get an update.
Do you want to go back real quick, Corey? There's something that you did miss there.
I did.
So there's 2 different time windows here, and these are both important, so I do want to hit on them. There's the Kpi Search Schedule, which is how often are we running this search? We're going to run it once a minute. And for the Splunk admins who might get a little bit nervous about running a save search every minute, keep in mind these are super efficient searches that really roll up into even more efficiency when you get out of there. The other one is that calculation window, and it's important to look at that and make sure that you have them 99% of the time you're going to want them matched up. The calculation window is how much data am I actually looking at it. So if you had left it the way that you had, you'd have been looking at a 5-minute running window of that data, which isn't necessarily what you want in that case. In some cases, that makes sense, but you need to be real cognizant of what you're doing there and make sure you get what you want. So thought I'd call that out.
That's why he's the SME, folks. That's why we've got him on. So fantastic. Now we've got the timing set up. So not only are we running the search properly, but we're running over the right amount of data. Excellent. In this case, we do know, based on that VARs file, it tells us that it is in Celsius or centigrade. And so we're going to use that. And then monitoring lag, we're going to leave that at 30 seconds. Default value is fine there.
Yep.
And then we're going to hit next. And we are going to go ahead and backfill. And backfill just basically means, hey, we're going to go look at the last 7 days of data, pull that in so that we can actually create some thresholds on real data. So we're going to backfill it. And what it's going to do is we're going to show us the data over the last 60 minutes. And this is where we get to build thresholds, right? So we're going to say not everything for track temp is probably considered normal. We probably want to understand some granularity. So I'm going to add a few track temps. Now, our base severity could actually be not just normal, because maybe it gets too cold. That's a bad thing for us. So maybe we want to call one low. We want to call the middle one normal. And then we want to call the upper one like, hey, the track's getting kind of hot. Heat is probably less of our friend because it's going to affect tire temperatures more drastically. So let's say that, you know what? I'm guessing that track temp of anything above 30 degrees centigrade, probably pretty good, right? That's a pretty warm piece of concrete. And so I'm guessing 30 is probably pretty true. I'm guessing we didn't have any track temps that were way out of bounds during our race. So I'm going to say that probably 30 to, 45 is probably safe. I don't know. Let's go lower that. Maybe if it gets over 40, we want to get concerned. And as you can see that as the race was on and we had, 10 cars on track, the temperature absolutely did raise. And if anybody watched the F1 race last weekend, the Austrian Grand Prix, the track was significantly hotter than it was in qualifying, and it absolutely caused changes to pit strategies. So what do you think about that? We got some thresholds. If it's below this value, probably concerned that the track is cold. If it's above that, probably getting kind of warm and hard on tires. What do you think?
And at a high level, what we're doing here is just categorizing this value as a low severity, a medium severity, or normal. Like, right, we're just saying good, bad, or indifferent almost. And we're going to use that to really boil that up to how is the track performing as a whole.
Absolutely. So we can go create a few more. So we might also look at something like, one thing
Don't forget that save button, Corey.
Oh, you're right. Let me hit save before we do that. Save and enable. That way all of you all can start seeing this. If you're poking around in there, you'll actually see that service pop. Okay. So let's go create just a few more while we're here. We don't have to create a ton, but I'm going to create one called air temp, because these are race cars. The temperature of the air that gets sucked in through the intake manifold, it will affect the efficiency of the engine. And so, in this case, cold air is kind of great, but maybe we're getting super hot air, which may not be good. Okay. So in this case, again, we don't even have to look very far. We can see one right here called air temp, right? That's probably pretty interesting. We're going to click next. We're going to, again, not split by entity because everybody's sending us the same data. We're going to do it every minute, as John advised us, and look at a minute's worth of data. We know that in this case, all temperatures are in C, and we are going to backfill it so we can see those handy dandy thresholds to help make the historical data so we can make our thresholds matter. Okay, so air temp, let's add it again. Let's do the same sort of way we did before, where the base threshold is low. Oh, I get crazy with the pull here. Let's see.
Yeah, and in this case, because it was a 20-minute race, the temperature predictably didn't change a ton, but we would definitely want to know if that was ever something that did change. So it's a good thing to have, even though it doesn't look like all that exciting data right here.
That's true. Okay, so maybe not that interesting in the single race, but over many races, and understanding that might be sort of interesting. Okay. So we save that, and then let's think of another one. So there's actually one in here called weather, and it's actually surprisingly uninteresting. So we'll I'm not going to use weather, but I'll show it to you in a second. Let's look at.
Well, this is why it's important to know and be able to explore your data too.
Exactly, that's very important.
Opportunity to go and say, and we thought when we were kind of discussing what we wanted to do, we looked at weather and we said, man, that's got to be super interesting. Nope.
Yeah. So let's look at wind, because if you got a lot of wind blowing around on the track, that could make things sort of uncomfortable. Specifically in cars that rely heavily on downforce, you got wind moving around, that could be less than fun. So again, we're looking in the SIM metrics index. And again, the reason that is because we used the Splunk infrastructure monitoring. That's what SIM stands for, Splunk infrastructure monitoring. We use that add-on to actually call to Splunk Observability Cloud to grab data. Okay. So we're looking at Iracing. And there is one called weather, but weather type. What's actually interesting is why it's not useful is it's a Boolean. It's a 1 or a 0 value. Sorry, it's 1 or 0. 1 means dynamic. 0 means constant. Kind of, though, that's not, we don't need to monitor that. Okay, so the one that is interesting is wind. And we'll look at wind velocity. I probably don't care which direction it's blowing so much as though I want to know, hey, is it windy out there?
Oh, bad. Yeah.
Exactly. So again, making the same updates. All right. And then the unit, I actually don't remember what it's in. Candidly, I don't think it's too
Meters
important.
per second.
Oh, it's in
in
meters per second. All right. Same thing I generally measure gravity in. 9.8. Oh no, that's meters per second per second. Never mind.
How often are you measuring gravity? Never
You know, it's for all those flat earthers out there, and I'm kidding.
just to see if it changed on you.
Yeah, I keep an eye on it.
Okay.
I'm concerned about it mostly. It's highly concerning. And again, we probably want to start with actually base severity being normal is good because no wind is great. A high wind is probably really not good. And a very gusty wind is probably pretty bad. So something like this. We had generally almost no wind. Let's put 3 and 7 there. Okay. Makes sense. And again, these are not all that crazy because, again, single race for 20 minutes in one track. We know that the track, if we're not experiencing wind based on what's produced, we shouldn't be overly concerned. Okay. So now we're going to click save. And I think 3 is enough for now. I'll challenge folks to think about if they think there are other things that are out there. We didn't use like the track temp by the crew. We didn't look at fog level. That's another metric that's out there that could be interesting. You could look at air pressure. So based on the air pressure might be affecting again downforce and may affect combustion. So a couple different things. Okay, so let's take a pause there. Actually, I want to explore one thing. You can actually, we're building KPIs, and as John said, KPIs are basically the metric that we want to threshold against. But we're building a service that we want to give it a service health score. And so you can actually decide or tell ITSI which KPIs are the most important to affect that score. So like we should think probably air temp, maybe not quite as important as something like track temp, because track temp is directly in contact with tires. And wind, probably pretty dang important, because if it gets really windy out there, it could be important. So what ITSI is going to do is, as it calculates that overall health score, it's going to weight each KPI based on this feedback that we give it. And again, this is our way of doing it from a domain expertise perspective.
And I'm glad you brought this up, because if you notice, and I'm curious as to what, if anybody here knows, did you notice that ours goes to 11? Little Spinal Tap reference there.
I did notice that.
Does anybody know what 11 does? 11 is a special identifier for this. So 1 through 10 will directly affect the weighting of when you have these. 11 is an override. If wind is out of bounds and you want to know that is an important thing, like you don't care about anything else, if wind goes out of bounds, put it at 11, and your service health score is directly affected instead of calculated there. So it's kind of an interesting
way. There's like a fog percentage warning, and over a certain percentage, we call off the race.
Ah,
100% right. That's a great use case for it.
That's a really smart one there. Okay.
That's right. It is a hard fail. It is a.
I'll let somebody else figure it out, and then I'll just copy it.
Kyle, we don't mean to pick on you, buddy. I appreciate you letting us do the work for you, though.
Hey, I'm not upset about it either.
Okay,
so yay technology.
That's right. Okay, so what we've done so far is we built a service called Track Health. We've added some KPIs. We only picked 3. We could add some more, but for the respect of your all's time, you get the idea. You could be creative with the data set. And then we've created some importance levels around the KPIs on how they should calculate those KPIs to impact our overall health score. So let's go back and look at our service analyzer view, which is kind of our default view that we pop into whenever we come into Splunk IT Service Intelligence. And we're going to make sure that the time window is set to the last 60 minutes just for fun. And here you'll see, oh, look, we now have 4 cars, and we have some track health. And by the way, this one's comical. Ryan clearly set some different thresholds, and he's intentionally throwing flags, which I love. Also, Kyle, this is your right front tire. You were having more trouble at this point in the race than I was, so that's good to know.
I didn't pit too much, but there was one point where I brushed a wall and it was bad.
I think there was one point where you brushed a John.
Shenanigans. I call shenanigans.
Okay. So now, look, we've seen these services, but as we said before, just seeing them like this doesn't really help us all that much because track health, as we said before, it impacts all these cars, right? All these cars are dependent upon this track health metric. So now we need to create this next step, which is called service dependency. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into, let's see, do we start in the track health or do we start in the car, John, if we want to make them dependent upon one another?
Well, so that's a great question. So the service dependency, you are dependent on a service. And so in this case, I think what we want to do is make the car dependent on the track, right?
That's right. Yes, sir.
So we're going to go into, let's pick your car since Kyle's just going to copy your work anyway.
That's right.
We'll jump in there and we will add a service dependency. So we can
look at there. It's right there. Service dependencies. That's fantastic.
And we'll say we're going to add a dependency. And this is a little bit interesting. So we'll select track health and it's going to give us some options here. And this is kind of important an important distinction that I think is probably not as clear as it should be. We can select either the service health score or any number or combination of those KPIs. 99 times out of 100, you're just going to select the service health score and say, my service health is dependent on my car. And that's what we're going to do here because it makes the most sense, quite frankly. So we'll select that. But
that's a good point, though. Like that gives you, I do
gives you
want to
more
pull that through.
It's
a similar idea as that 11 that we have in the importance, right? It's a similar concept that says, hey, look, we understand that the service dependencies aren't just simple line dependencies. They could be very complex interdependencies, and we give you the ability to really tune this to your system, your process, and the data that you have about those to instrument. So I just want to say that that's kind of a neat thing because we're giving you multiple ways to say, wow, this is critically important to my service that matters.
Absolutely. Okay? And usually we'll find our customers will go in and they will tune that over time. And so when we're building this initial one, we're trying to get an understanding of how this works because this data is really hard to visualize in any other way, right? And so that's where we're headed with that.
Okay, so we built the dependency, and you could have multiple dependencies, but in this case, we're again just doing something simple dependency. So we built it, and I did click save, John. You don't have to remind me this time.
I was
learning.
I'm nervous that
I'm learning.
Has given me nightmares.
So all good. Okay, so now again, you see your tile view, much the same, but if we click to our tree view, you now see something kind of interesting. Corey's car is dependent on the track. So what I would challenge Ryan and George to do, and maybe even Kyle while you're over there, is go make your services dependent upon that same track. And because again, the track, we're all racing on it. There's no reason to have a different one. So everybody go out there and make yours dependent on the track, and it'll make our analyzer view look really, really slick. Okay. So I'm going to pause there. Did we miss anything, John or Kyle, that we wanted to cover in the basic build out of the track service and the understanding of service connectedness?
No, there's one thing I'll just add, though, is that you might be thinking, man, my service is really complex. I don't want to have to go out and build this. We're showing you the basic way of going about and doing that. There are ways to do this of bulk imports, right, where you just provide it a CSV or some other, maybe a Splunk search that tells you, informs your service trees and lets you go ahead and just build that out without having to do these manual steps, right? Once you kind of know how you want it to look, there are definitely ways of doing this in bulk.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of in bulk, the next one we build is a service that is going to be much like our car. It is going to be split by entity, and there's going to be a number of folks who will be interested in this one. So, John, this is a question for you to guide us. I'd like to do this one as a service template. So would you recommend that we go in and we create a new service template first, or should we create a service and then make it a template?
So knowing what you've already done here, there exists some pre-work that we've done, a service template that already exists.
Yes.
It is often easier to create the service itself, create those KPIs so that you can get a live view of what's going on. And then you can go ahead and templatize that service and use it going forward. Let's see what is happening here. Our server seems to have decided to disagree with this.
We got a bunch of people in here poking around. Things happen. The clouds are working. Okay. So again, one of the things that we did, I was kind of setting John up, see if you remember. so one of the things that we did is as I said, I was nerding out and I was really excited about this, this particular conversation. And so one of the things that we did was we built a Iracing, let's see.
Driver performance.
Correct. Yes, it's driver performance. Okay, because the driver's performance is what dictates our race performance. Like if the driver wins, that's who goes on the podium. So what's we call it the driver performance. So what you'll see here is that, again, we were under configuration, under service templates. And what I created was a set of KPIs. And I want to talk through the KPIs just again about this so you understand sort of the data. Our most important measure of are we winning the race or not is are we winning the race or not? That seems obvious, but like, position in the race, right? So are you in first or are you in last, right? That's kind of an important thing. So what we did is we used the Iracing player car position. Now, kind of fun sort of inside story. If you are an Iracing geek, you know that there's also this thing called Iracing player class position. And what Iracing actually does in races, and it gives you this metric, is within your class, where are you ranked? So if you're not concerned about, like in our race, I remember at the end of the race, Blake Reynolds, the professional driver for McLaren's Shadowy Sports team, he said, "Hey, congrats, Corey, you won your class." And I said, "No, I lost you, bud. I don't know. Like, you won. What are you talking about?" And so what he meant is with your really terrible driver's license, Corey, you won of all the people that have your low driver's license. He's like, "I still beat you, but in your class, you did pretty good." So anyways, we're using overall because, again, we care about the overall, sort of outcome. So that's the metric we're using. And then from a thresholding perspective, what we did is we didn't actually set any thresholds, did we? Did we not?
So yeah, we'll do that in the service itself.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, that's right. Okay, so that position in race is really important. Another one that's really important that tells you if you're doing okay is incident count. So an incident in Iracing is, did you make contact with another driver? Did you go off track? Did you bump the wall? Did you have a wreck? And there's different incident numbers. Like you can get 4 for bumping somebody. You can get 10 for you causing a wreck. And so we know that we're not going to win races, or we could actually be disqualified from a race if we have too many incidents. So that's pretty important.
Or if you drive backwards on the track.
That is a reason why somebody might kick you out of a race, John. I'm just going to throw it out there. And then the other ones that we found interesting were, during the race, it'd be good to understand how are we doing from a time perspective. Now, when we say time perspective, oh, we lost John. He's having a little connectivity challenge. We'll get him back here in just a second. The lap time delta to best lap metric is a metric that basically says, on my current lap, what is the delta, the difference between the best lap I've run? So how far off my best pace am I running? So we want to kind of keep an eye on that. Like, hey, if you ran a best lap and then your times are getting way slower, that's a pretty good indicator you're probably not going to win that race. You're going to have a poor overall performance. Because, and as we saw in the virtual race2.conf, consistency in racing is often key. So this is kind of a consistency measure. It's a similar metric if you look at the lap time delta to optimal lap. So when we say optimal lap, John's bouncing in and out. Poor guy, he's having internet challenges. Optimal lap is basically on any track, it's generally split into 3, or typically I think in iRacing, it's split into 4 sectors. And what the optimal lap is on some number of laps that you've gone, what is the best time that you've run for each sector? Total that as a optimal lap. If you could run your best sections, that's your optimal lap time. And what is the delta between your last lap and that optimal lap? So again, these are consistency measures that typically tell us something interesting that we know is indicative of, are you going to win the race or not? And that's our goal as a service. Now, one that may not be quite as obvious is frame rate, which is something clearly drivers in real cars don't probably care about. But frame rate in the iRacing world is a very important thing because our ability to race is based on our ability to see the race in front of us and have very high speed graphics processing so that we have the, we know what's going on the track. As Tobin said in the interview, you don't have the rear end in a seat in an actual car to give you any feedback about what's going on. You need to be able to see. So if your frame rate drops below a good level, you could start to see it look like choppy. Like if you ever see video that's, you don't have enough internet bandwidth, right? It looks choppy and it starts to frame drop.
I feel like you're picking on me right now, Corey.
You should feel triggered on that one, John. I was looking at you when I said it. So again, frame rate, these are all sort of interesting things that tell us, are we going to be successful at winning the race? Okay. So that's what we built this service template. So what we can do here is if we know that service template is useful to us, we can say, let's do a new service from template. So we're going to call this Corey race. Okay. And we're linked to a service template, which is based on this one right here. You can see from the drop down, there's a bunch of them. We have iRacing driver performance. It defaulted because of where we selected up there in the corner. It's using these KPIs. And John, do we want to hit this enable 7 days of backfill for all service KPIs?
Yeah, we can do that. Now we do want to make sure that, when we do that, we're aware that it does increase the load on our system for a short burst of time. So if things go kind of, it's because we just backfilled, 5 different KPIs for 7 days. That'll be fine, but we actually do want to see that. So we're going to go ahead and click yes, and we'll be good.
That's right. So now we've got a new service. And so here we do want to split this by KPI. So John, do I just need to click here to add set of rules?
Yep.
I do, as it turns out. And I think I'm going to go ahead and select driver. And because driver is the entity that we've already set up, and we know this is for Corey's car, we're going to select this as Corey's KPI. So that's good. I'm going to click Corey's service. So I'm going to click save and enable. Now,
what this has done is just gone ahead and kick off those backfill searches. They're going to be backfilling that. We should start to see within a minute or so all that data. But then, we can go look at the KPIs and see the thresholds that we had set. This is where the fun stuff is, right? It brought in all the work that you had previously done.
That's exactly right. So it actually picked up all these KPIs. So if we start to see anything below 50 frames per second, the human eye is going to start to probably struggle a little bit with this, given that we're talking about race speeds at over 100 miles per hour, right? So we don't want to ever have that. You can see I did have some good times where I was pumping over 70 frames a second. And, for you folks that are interested in the tech that we're using to race, I'm running on a gaming rig that's got a 2070 Super GPU, and I'm connected to an HP Reverb 2 VR headset. So my machine is basically rendering a 2160 by 2160 image for each eye simultaneously during the race. So it's able to do that at over 60 frames a second. It's pretty sweet. Now, clearly, if I could find a 3080, I could probably get significantly better. But if you all find one and you just you want to sell it at the manufacturer's suggested retail, please call a man. I would be happy to take it off your hands.
I'll give you $1 over.
That's right, $1 over cost.
This helps with cost justifications of upgrading your rig. Really,
it does. Really, I'm here for y'all.
Yeah, you show it to the wife, and the wife says, "Oh, I can see that clearly. The data says you do need a better video card, right?"
That's exactly right. So you can see here again. This is the race. We're seeing data because John has created this nice stream of every 30 minutes it runs. But look here, my times start to get way off my best lap, and that is absolutely towards the end of the race because that the tires just gave way. I had no traction. It was full understeer situation, and so my delta started getting way off. Okay, so we have now seen that we created service, and we've made it show up. Let's go look at the service analyzer, just for fun. Okay, so now we see a service. Oh, look, we've got race. Oh, some boys have been already following along. Look at these guys. They are hands on keyboard making their own races happen. But let's go look at the tree view. Oh, snap. You know what we didn't do? We know that this race is dependent on both the car and the track. So, John, we should probably go back into our race and configure some dependency. What do you think?
I think so.
All right. So let's go back to services. Because we know, again, our outcome, the outcome we're trying to drive, the thing that makes us money in this arena of sim racing is winning races. And those races are won assuming that the car is able to perform as expected. We're not missing the opportunity to pit when we're supposed to, right? And so we know that my race is dependent upon my car. And in this case, again, we're going to just choose the overall service health score and we're going to get done. But you could base it on any one of these metrics that are part or one of the KPIs that we built. We're going to click save. And y'all, this is the view. This is the thing we're trying to build, which is, are we able to understand service dependencies that our overall race is dependent on the car? And look at this.
Look at George is getting creative, and you can do absolutely that. Your race is dependent on both your car and the track health. So we're going to bring them up, at 2 levels. Really, the sky is the limit as far as what you want to do. Now, there are possibilities where you can kind of break the space-time continuum, if you will, by creating circular dependencies. If you're going to do that, ITSI will warn you, and it'll let you do it, but it will warn you, hey, this is not a good idea. Divide by 0 is not going to be. It's not going to work.
You're crossing 88 miles per hour. Be careful.
Exactly.
Okay, so by the way, this is we have just solved the overall challenge for today's hackathon, and that is we built the service that is the track that we're all dependent upon. All of our cars are dependent. And again, you could build out more metrics if you want to in KPIs. This gave us the basic idea that all the cars are impacted by the temp of both the track, the air, and the wind velocity. We built the cars last time that we said, hey, this car's tire performance may be dependent upon that air temp or that track temp. So now we have those dependencies. And we've said, at the end of the day, we need to build something that the end user cares about, that Tobin cares about, that Tobin's boss's boss, Zach Brown, CEO of McLaren Racing, cares about. And that is, are we winning races? And this is the service we created that says, hey, these are highly indicative metrics that tell us that we're going to win and that we're performing as expected, understanding that all of these are dependent upon some underlying infrastructure to be successful. So I feel like we did it, guys. What do you think?
Absolutely did.
Good. Yeah. Can't wait to copy it.
Service templates, here we come. Okay, so let's do this. Let's look at this and let's recap. We created service dependencies between track conditions and our car's health, and then we created that new service that is absolutely tied to the business outcome we're trying to drive. And I encourage folks, we did obviously have some folks live hacking in there. That is fantastic to have you all building things. And again, this is going to be up for a while. So go in there and continue to play around with it. And if you're watching this recording, make sure you've registered and go get hands-on. Again, the lab environment's available, and continue to learn. Because here's the thing, we're going to show you a preview in a second. All this stuff is building, right? Every hackathon we've done is built on a journey that we're taking you on. And that journey is, we're going to start to build, like in the next hackathon, we're going to start to build visualizations that are the thing we would actually go give back to Tobin. All the stuff we've done so far, like, he doesn't want to see, like, he doesn't, it's the sausage making, right? He wants to taste the deliciousness, and we're going to get him there. But there's work that has to be done, and there's intelligent, sort of data, and analytics that have to be done, and then building out of the tools to make all that possible. So continue to follow along with us and go tinker around. And again, your homework, as Kyle said, I know it's the summer, but your homework is, what did we miss? Like, what other services really matter in racing that you think would be interesting? And like John's case, we'd look at his internet service, which continues to be a challenge for him. John, you missed it. We're going to build a service on your internet stability.
I was just about to say, I think I might have to go.
Yeah. All good. So again, show us what we missed, build it out, and by the way, folks, get active on social. If you want to tag Splunk and use the hashtag data drivers as you've built things out, please do so. And if you opted in during the registration process, y'all post some stuff. I got some cool swag we'll send your way. So be sure to continue to play and tinker and have some fun with it. Join us next time. As I said, the next session we're going to do builds on all the work we've done to this point, but it's actually going to be building something that we would deliver to somebody like Tobin that says, this is your race day visualization based on the work that we've built so far. We're going to leverage the services and KPIs that we've built together so far, maybe brush those up a little bit if I can get Kyle to do some work as well. And then we're going to use glass tables and Splunk's dashboard framework to actually build these really powerful visualizations. The examples that you saw in John's sort of ITSI overview slides, we're going to be building specific ones for Iracing. And hopefully, if we do a good job, some of the work that we build might actually make its way into that Logitech G Challenge, and you might be able to see some of your data really brought to life in a fun way. So I definitely encourage everybody to tune in to the Logitech G Challenge. Get out there, go Iracing as quick as you can, but make sure, really importantly, go sign up for .conf 21. Again, it is happening in person in Las Vegas, following all the appropriate guidelines. So join us there if you can in person to be safe. Again, we're presenting a data drivers breakout session. There's going to be some super fun stuff. I can't tell you the details yet, but there's going to be some super fun racing inspired things happening in the pavilion. And you'll absolutely be able to enjoy some of this stuff in a virtual context if you're not able to travel to join us in person. So
Corey, shameless plug. What's on your hat? What else do you need to
register? Register for Boss of Ops and Observability. It is happening real life at .conf with version 5 coming to you with 2 episodes based on data drivers. And we hope that you'll join us. And guys, this is not possible without you. I want to say, John, specifically, big thank you to you for building out the data gen and for helping to make these environments available to our friends here on the stream. Kyle, thank you so much for copying my work, but being an inspiration in so many ways.
Do what I can.
Corey, thank you for putting this together. This has been, like I said, one of the most fun projects that I've gotten to work on in recent history. So it's super fun.
Absolutely. Well, as we always say, whatever you're into, be data driven and join Data Drivers.